Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for tuning in here. Now that we've left that downward slope that we were with the main team, we're bringing to you guys a topic that you guys seem to enjoy, and we've tried to focus. All props to Braden for covering. It is the youth prospects. And now moving on to the lower divisions, our USYNT. The U17s played at the Vaclav Jezek tournament. If I butcher that, my apologies. I did my best, but now, just looking into it, we had a really good performance, some flashy names there, as you guys could see on the thumbnail, giving us an analysis on a breakdown of the roster. If you want to let us know all the players that got called up and a brief insight on any of them that you think are more notorious.
Yeah, well, I'll get more into the actual performance of the players later in the video, but for now, I'll just run through the quick roster and give a brief overview of this group. For the goalkeepers, there was just two, Jack Courtcamp from Sporting Kansas City and Aiden Stokes from New York Red Bulls. Stokes in particular is interesting because he's a multinational with Wales, and he's actually been a captain of their youth team in the past, so he's at least a dual nat to watch out for because we know Wales don't have the strongest of teams, so he's going to be a high priority for them. For the defenders, we had three center backs and three fullbacks. For the center backs, Christopher Cups from Chicago Fire, who served as the captain at this tournament. We had Enrique Martinez from LA Galaxy and Adrian Sanders from LAFC. And then for the fullbacks, a left back, Pedro Guimarães from Orange County, just moved there from I think the LAFC Academy as well. Nice to see another young guy taking the USL route that has proven so successful for so many different players. Gio Villa on the right side from RSL, and then Oliver Tan, who can play on both but is primarily a right back from the San Jose Earthquakes. For the midfielders, six more names, a bit more high-profile ones. I think you guys will start to recognize some of the names as we get through the midfielders and the forwards. We start off with, of course, Maximo Carrizo, the Argentine-American from NYCFC, the youngest ever homegrown signing when he turned 14. Huge prospect there. Jack Mize from Borussia Dortmund. Didn't really play at this tournament much. He was in the roster, but only played like 20 minutes in the final game because he had an injury, but it's still noteworthy to mention that he's here. He'll be a huge part of the group in the future. Big prospect from Dortmund. He moved there as well. I think actually from NYCFC as well. Alexander Smith as well as another one. Similar to Stokes, he's a dual national with a UK nation. He's plays for Rangers Academy in Scotland, actually just signed his first professional deal with them recently. And again, just like Stokes, has been a captain of Scotland's youth national teams and actually will be with them later this month as well. So another somewhat high-profile dual national to keep an eye on. Another one of those is Landon Amenolo from Chelsea's academy, also signed his first professional deal recently with the club and has been, I believe, with England's youth national teams in the past. I think is also eligible for Nigeria. So another one to keep an eye on. There's a lot of dual nationals at this kind of group. Luca Moisa was also there from RSL, and Jude Terry from LAFC. And then onto the forwards, Chase Adams, the striker from Columbus Crew, Lorenzo Cornelius, the winger from St. Louis City, Vitaly Hewlett, the winger from Chicago Fire, the Ukrainian dual national. I probably butchered his name, so apologies to any Ukrainians that might be watching. Mathieu Albert, of course, the Borussia Dortmund starlet, plays on the same team as Jack Mize at Dortmund, just moved there from LA Galaxy, multinational at Germany and France. Huge prospect. You probably saw him on the thumbnail, along with, of course, Kevin Sullivan, who I have his jersey behind me, from the Philadelphia Union, the best academy in the U.S. And rounding it out, we have Cade Cowell's clone or younger brother, whichever one you want to call him, Chance Cowell from, of course, the San Jose Earthquakes.
Yeah, it's really nice to see all these names. Some of you guys may not really know all of them. I don't know all of them, but just looking at listening at the clubs and some of the names that are not in Europe yet, they still have the potential to be there. They have done pretty well, especially at the GA Cup. Some guys like Jude Terry who have caught the eye, and overall it's all nice, fun and games, but then we get to how their performance actually was, which was actually pretty happy, honestly. A very satisfactory way that they delivered in this tournament. Only 4 national teams there, but if you want to walk us through what happened in the games, Braden, since again we need a little bit of hope and a silver lining after that camp that we had with the main team, how did it go?
Yeah, so like you said, there was 4 teams at this tournament, us being, of course, one of them. Our U17s, which are the 08s, and then, of course, 209s, Kevin Sullivan, Mathieu Albert, the 2 most important prospects here. are somehow the youngest ones. It kind of checks out, really. The other teams were actually playing with their U17s, so I think it's very important to note that our boys were playing a year up against high quality European opposition. And although the results on paper, 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw, they seem okay, considering the fact they're playing a year up at such a young level, I think is very significant. The first game was up against Germany and their U17s, which notably had 2 American dual nationals in their starting lineup. Montreal Colbreth, the winger from Bayer Leverkusen, he was actually part of their first team squad in preseason, made a couple appearances for them, one to watch for sure. And then Tyler Meiser as well from also Borussia Dortmund. We seem to just spawn players into their academies. Center back prospect has been featuring heavily with their U19s. Colbreth in particular was actually really impressive. I'll highlight him. I'm not going to highlight the opponent players, but since he's American, he's worth a shout. And I thought he was actually the best player on the pitch. Only played the first half, but drew a penalty, was so lively, gave our defense so many problems. I'd really, really like to see him with the U.S. youth national team set up sooner rather than later. I believe he was in the past, but recruiting him is going to be crucial because, I mean, we know at the senior level, our winger depth isn't necessarily the greatest. But more in depth into the game, we ended up losing 1-0, which I think is a fair result. It was actually off the penalty, of course, that Colbreth drew. They scored off of that. I think some key performers from there were Aidan Stokes, the goalkeeper that I mentioned is the dual national with Wales. He wasn't great with his feet, which seems to be a trend with American keepers, but he did make a lot of good saves to bail out the defense, which I will say was a little bit shaky in this game. I would have liked to have seen some improvement, but luckily we did see that in the next couple of games. And then in the attack, Kevin Sullivan and Maximo Carrizo, as expected, were the main sparks. I mean, they were the ones creating everything. In the first 30 minutes or so, Carrizo was at the center of everything. As the game progressed, it was more Kevin Sullivan. He even had one very ambitious shot from about 40 yards out that just went wide, would have been a highlight reel goal. And I think as well in this game, the subs, Lyndon Amenolo and Chance Cowell, made some nice contributions, really changed the game once they came in. Obviously, we didn't win the game, which is a little unfortunate, but considering we're playing a year up against Germany, one of the highest profile nations in the world, I think there's a lot of positives to take away from that one. On to the second game against Czechia, who I guess you could call the host nation because the tournament is in their country. And this was probably the best one of the lot. I mean, a 4-0 win against the hosts. And again, playing a year up, just so well done. First goal coming from a great counterattack. Kevin Sullivan playing one of the best switches, no-look switches on the volleys I've seen in a long time. Playing to Chance Cowell, who all throughout the game basically did what we've seen Cade do at youth level all these years. Use his physicality to perfection, his pace, drove forward, find Mathieu Albert, finishes. It's basically the same thing for the second goal. Chance Cowell again to Mathieu Albert. He gets a brace. We go in 2-0 up at halftime. Immediately after the break, Albert turns provider, gets an assist to Lorenzo Cornelius, who comes off the bench. Another under-the-radar performer who I think a lot of people might not have heard of, but was very impressive at this tournament. He gets the third goal, and then the fourth one for the highlight reel. Jude Terry takes the ball from his own half, dribbles through several Czech defenders by himself, and finishes past the keeper. Basically just called an ISO for any basketball fans, kind of similar to Heung-min Son's goal against Burnley. If you guys remember that, I think was nominated for or might have won the Puskas a couple years ago. Very, very impressive from the LAFC midfielder, and overall just an incredible performance. 4-0 win against a team from Europe that's playing a year up. Basically everyone was good in this game. And then for the final one, a 1-1 draw with Slovakia, again playing a year up. It's not the best result, not the highest profile result, but still I think very impressive that we came out of this tournament with a win, a draw, and a loss against teams a year up from Europe, the highest level of competition. The goal in that one was scored again by Lorenzo Cornelius. Great assist from Oliver Kahn from left back. And I think overall just some really good results. I mean, we'll get into some more key takeaways as we move on, but any thoughts, Siri?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I watched the highlights for two of the games. I didn't get to watch, unfortunately, the one against Germany is the one that I couldn't see any highlights at all. A bit hard and tricky to find, and even to tune into the streams as well. So props for keeping up with that. I just think it's really nice that USSF, although they have gotten with the senior team things wrong in the past, I think that in the development and the youth level, the decisions at least on expanding are pretty good. They seek options for our guys to get the best opportunities. Hopefully that's a trend for the future, and these guys growing up being used to playing in these tournaments and gelling up with what I think might be the actual golden generation, it's really encouraging for them to get these results. So moving on to the takeaways, I'm just going to ask something that I know the comments always ask. The players that you think these guys are U17, and some of them are really, really young, but the guys that you think have shined the most and have the easiest bridge to the senior team, and then your takeaways as well on the ones that might take a little while but show themselves to be worthy at that level, at least for a name to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, I mean, it's what everyone wants to know, right? And I think you're spot on. I think I actually mentioned this in the very first Hot Takes video we did, which was who knows how long ago, sometime last year. But I did mention that I think this generation here, the 08s, the 09s, maybe even in the future, is the true golden generation. These are going to be our stars. I mean, we're going to see later next year, actually, how they stack up against the world's best. We're going to have the CONCACAF U17 championship next year, probably in February, because that's when the 2023 one was. And then, of course, the U17 World Cup, which will probably be maybe June, maybe. I mean, it's tough to say, really, because the dates aren't out, but it'll be sometime next year, either in the summer or fall. This is when we get a real indication, a 48-team tournament against all the youth teams from around the world. But I mean, as they progress, we'll get, of course, better indications. But I do think this is the true golden generation. As for the key players who I think could impact the USMNT in the future, it's a little bit of a crapshoot since they're so young. But of course, we have to start with the 209s, Kevin Sullivan and Mathieu Albert. I mean, you saw them on the thumbnail. I think they've been the two highest hyped prospects of this age group, even though they are playing a year up, and especially considering that with that, they were playing 2 years up against the competition in this tournament. I think they both looked really good. Albert really came into his own. He actually came into this camp with an illness. So the fact that he battled through that and then was so good, 2 goals and an assist in the second game, I think really shows his quality, why Dortmund rate him so highly. I actually mentioned this on the stock watch as well, but he's already made his debut with their U19s despite only being 15 years old. And if he can continue to stay with that squad as maybe a rotation player for the rest of the season, I think his trajectory is moving really quickly, similar to even Christian Pulisic that we saw so many years ago back at Dortmund. It's basically 10 years on from when that happened, so it's the perfect time for someone to emerge like this. I'm not saying maybe these guys are going to be 2026 World Cup contenders. I think that's almost impossible. But for 2030, I think you're going to see a good fair few of these guys at least be in consideration. And nowhere better to start than with Kevin Sullivan and Mathieu Albert. I mean, I don't even really need to talk about Kevin, do I? Everyone knows the hype. Dude's already got like 250K Instagram followers. It seems like it's more popular than half of the men's national team players we have now in the country, which is kind of insane. Hopefully he just lives up to the hype, because there's been a lot of hype. As for some others, I'm going to go for, I'll start with the defense, really. I think the goalkeeper, Aiden Stokes, was pretty solid in this tournament. I don't know if he's going to be USMNT quality. I don't even know if he's going to pick us over Wales, but you always have to mention goalkeepers that have good performances, especially considering the state of our goalkeeper position with the senior national team right now. So one to at least keep an eye on. He did actually captain us in, I think, the last game of the tournament, and like I said earlier, he's captain Wales as well. Seems to have natural leadership qualities, which is another thing we like to see. It's something that we don't really have in the senior pool, so maybe if he continues to progress, he could be an option. For the defenders, I really like what I saw from some of the fullbacks. Juan Giovia from RSL seems like a very, very good one-on-one defender at right back. He's just so solid. I don't think he got beat by his man much, if at all, throughout the entire tournament. Very, very impressed from him. Oliver Tan being versatile on both sides, as well as very impressive, getting a nice assist in the last game. From the center back, Christopher Cupps, the captain of this team for the majority of the tournament, I think was very solid, especially in the second game. Showed some very nice reps one-on-one defensively, stopped a couple fast breaks that could have been very dangerous, that I thought was really really nice to see, because again, with the center back position for the senior team, it's another one that we really need players to step up. So I'm not saying he's going to do that necessarily this cycle, but for the next one, you never know. I mean, the Fire Academy has already produced some really good players. But on to the midfield, I think the double pivot of Amenalo and Jude Terry, I think, are going to be huge for the future. Amenalo, of course, at Chelsea, Terry at LAFC, two of my highest rated 08s. I think both of them are going to be, again, add to the defensive midfield depth that we've talked about for so long. And then in the attack, Chance Cowell is going to be a youth national team merchant, just like his brother. As for the senior team level, I don't know. Chase Adams, you can maybe say, but he didn't really have much of a strong tournament. I mean, that's pretty much it for now. I mean, some of these other guys will come into their own. Overall, this age group is hugely exciting. Keep an eye on them, especially as next year progresses. But for now, I think those are the key guys to especially keep an eye on as they progress with their club careers.
Once again, thank you, Braden, for tuning into that and giving us that report. And for anyone who got curious about these players, make sure to check out our Twitter or X, because Braden does a really good job at reporting all these players that are out of the scope as well, sometimes don't get released or have picked other nations as well. Always nice to keep up with the guys and names that may be coming through. And hopefully this is the truly golden generation, and we can call this one that we have right now sort of bronze, just the first decent one. But hopefully things get better in the future. Stay tuned as we have more content coming up. Even though the window for international breaks is over, still a lot of content out about the USMNT that we have planned for you guys. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time.